Politicians are bought and sold. They give to the rich as they take from the old. They give to the rich as they rob from the young. On the end of their lines, at the point of a gun.
Hi, and welcome to the new podcast stroke interactive feature, Ed Deedigan's Truth versus Politics, The Emperor's New Clothes. Felt compelled to do an individual, politically orientated podcast because of the appalling nature that are and condition of our political scene, both nationally, which is, I don't need to go into the details of how appalling we have been run for many years, but also on a local level. So instead of just doing the old podcast that we were associated with, this is an individual one, my personal perspective of truth versus politics. And I'm very pleased to say that the first guest that we have on the show is a very able and dynamic and community-orientated individual who has seen politics from a lot of angles, and I was fascinated to meet and greet her in her home context, which is on a beautiful farm in Wiltshire. And the farming issues that we talk about are absolutely so relevant and so important that leading up to the next election, we need to have, instead of the same old party political BS, we need clear, independent, collaborative ways of looking at our communities, both on the social environment, the natural environment, the economic aspects. So over the weeks, I'll hopefully be interviewing people of a different political persuasion than myself, because let's face it, I'm just talking from a perspective of someone who's worked in the society and in community with Can Do for 25 years, working in some of the hardest to reach areas, of hardest to reach aspects of society, both in Wiltshire, all aspects, areas of Wiltshire, but all over the country and internationally. So I do actually have a lot of aspects and worked with big business as well as small communities and individuals. So now it has come the time for me to put all that knowledge into play, but to shine a light on aspects of politics that really need to be examined under a microscope, the microscope of public opinion, because far too long, far too many people have been getting away with it. So I aim to help stop the rot and to give people an opportunity to talk about what they find important in the society and communities, and also to put my quite experienced spin on it. I have been in the past an advisor to government, been to the Home Office, been to various Sports England, various aspects of society looking at community cohesion. So I probably need to put my mouth where my mouth is and talk up, because like the lad in The Emperor's New Clothes, the Emperor is definitely naked. We're on this beautiful farm, which is somewhere sort of around Swindon.
Between Swindon and Cirencester.
With this wonderful person who you will have seen. Perhaps you could put a clip the last time we had Liz on, which was some years ago now, when you were running for...
Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what they think about the Police and Crime Commissioner position. Because that, yes, is a bizarre... you're going to have to explain it a bit more to me, actually, but why that's politically aligned. It does make me... Anyway, Liz, how are you and what are you up to?
Well, I'm okay. I'm just getting over a bad bout of some sort of infection. So I still sound a bit coldy. But other than that, I'm busy, still trying to save British farming. which has always been my primary purpose of getting involved in politics.
Yeah.
One of the many reasons getting involved in politics, but
Yeah, and rightly so, because actually it, to me, one of the reasons I contacted you, because on the continent, they're very vocal, aren't they, physically and what have you, about what they perceive as their diminishing value and respect for farming, which is an essential part of our survival. It always beggars belief that people don't seem to, particularly city dwellers it would seem, don't seem to make the connection between how that food gets to their plates and who is the person or the people that are responsible for delivering it. Before we get onto that, so we definitely want to speak a lot about farming, and I definitely want to pick your brain about the state of British farming and how farmers up and down the country feel that they've been treated, valued, devalued or whatever. You used to be, I say advisedly, you used to be a Liberal Democrat councillor, weren't you? Or were you just were you a Liberal Democrat?
I've been a Liberal Democrat candidate. So I stood for the parliamentary a couple of seats.
Yeah.
And I stood as the Police and Crime Commissioner. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're not Liberal Democrat anymore.
No, I've left the Liberal. I'm free now.
So why is
I'm
that?
free of all political allegiance.
Yeah. I mean.
I'm not joining any more parties.
No. Okay.
Because I feel that I'm able now to commentate about my values,
Yeah.
which I feel are shared actually by the majority of the country.
Yes.
And I sort of got a clearer vision, and I've got a big enough platform now to be able to go out and say what I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not being told what to say.
Yeah.
And I don't have to defend things I find indefensible. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think that people would be amazed, even at a local level. We've had a lot to do, or unfortunately, a lot of really poor treatment at the hands of the Liberal Democrats in Chippenham, especially the town councillors. And I'm going to go into this, not now, because I really want to speak about farming. I want you to speak about farming because I haven't worked on a farm for many years now. But I think people will be appalled, the lack of democracy, and it's not just the Liberal Democrats, but they have, unfortunately, a couple of them have been appalling. And you probably know that we work with some of the sort of hardest to reach on the margins of society. The last thing we need is people playing at politics in the local town council, undermining our 25 years of work. They're not doing it, they're not rolling up their sleeves and working this, and then when you talk to the councillors independently, they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it because this is what they've all agreed on as a party. They vote, how they coalesce around certain ideas which are not beneficial to the public. So you're out of party politics. I'd never get into it. I've never been a member of a party. I used to vote Liberal Democrat, bizarrely, and I think people thought I was some sort of socialist or whatever. I've never been any of those things. I will never vote Liberal Democrats because of the way the councillors in Chippenham have behaved. And I might actually think about running for election, just pure as an independent. Do you think that's a good idea? Okay, well, you can be my running partner. You can be my dog. Now.
And that's what's happening in Australia, actually.
Yeah.
A lot more independents are running.
That's what needs. The old ways are rubbish. Party politics are dead. And they should, we need a whole. And how would you suggest that we would revamp the political system? Because it's rotten.
We need a change of the voter system, and that is actually, when I look at it now retrospectively, the biggest failure of the Liberal Democrats in coalition to deliver on any of their core projects. Which was voter reform.
Yes.
And the tuition fees. Which was a massive betrayal. God, don't tell me they're going to come in here to do some feeding. Oh no, they're going around there.
That's big, wherever that is.
I thought a tractor was heading in here. You always get this with. I've now realised that I've done a bit more party political stuff. It's very good to go out for a party politician and cover themselves in a sugar coating to get voters to support them, but inside, what is inside and what do they believe in?
Yes.
And I think I've seen that. I think the Liberal Democrats is a very small party.
Yeah.
It attracts a certain type of individual who is prone to feeling supercilious. There's a lot of men in the Liberal Democrats who are very misogynistic as well. So I think that, any organisation struggles with these realities, whether it's political or commercial. But I think there's more of a sort of an element of chaos within a political party because it's mostly volunteers working. And so it's hard to control people. But once they're councillors, they are controlled. And that is what you're seeing at the front end of what the values are. And when you look into the Liberal Democrats, and there have been some good coverage of the Lib Dems in The Guardian about one of their big donors called Paul Marshall, who is behind GB News.
Oh my God, right, really? Right.
And there's a thing called the Orange Book, and actually it is that, and I hadn't appreciated that at all, but it's the Orange Book which is really dominating the power within the Liberal Democrats.
Right.
And that belief is more attuned to a Liz Truss type libertarian reality of a sovereign type individual and an erosion of taxation and public services. And that is the absolute opposite to what I believe in.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that believes in community. I mean, look, if you fight for British farming and British food, it's actually fighting for food equality.
Yes.
And we have enjoyed that in this country, specifically since the last war.
Yeah.
And everything that we've done since the last war has been about pushing food security and pushing food quality.
Yeah.
And since we had, really since the coalition years, farming in particular has been under real attack. But it's actually everyone's food that's under attack.
That's it.
And that's your public health,
That's
as
everything.
well as your culture.
Yeah.
Because, yes, you're right, on the continent,
Yeah.
they have communities which are underpinned or totally at the focus of every community in France is agriculture. They have festivals to celebrate food.
Yeah.
We've lost that.
Yeah.
And we probably lost it after the repeal of the Corn Laws. And we had a temporary switch back to a better community after the war. And now Brexit is an offensive which is destroying that and taking us back to food being largely imported.
Which is in itself, if COVID did anything for this society, it should have really allowed people to realise that if we do not have locally accessible, locally sourced food all year round, and you agree with that, and I'm glad to hear that, because you definitely agree. Thank you, sisters. We're united. That basically the food supply, the supply lines were affected by a pandemic, albeit by a pandemic. But whatever it might be, whether it's Brexit, a pandemic that stops the flow or the access of good quality, well treated, whether it's livestock or just wholesome food right across the board, which is accessible to everyone from every demographic, then we are going to be in trouble. So the idea of leaving food, for instance, to the rigours and the whatever of the economic market is lunacy. Building on county farms is absolutely demented. Mm-hmm. We should be having, of course we need farmers who are, again, people forget, I lived on a farm, so I get it. It's a 365, 24/7 job. You can't, there isn't a time when you go, well,
with livestock,
totally, with livestock, I think even with the arable farming,
well, they have an easier
time, but I mean, I did live on an arable farm. It was arable. No, it was really nice, Lauren. I would say arable. Oh, stop it. But county farms. What's your opinion on county farms or building on county farms?
Look, I'm not anti-building. I understand we need housing, and I think it should be, there's sort of these decisions on where to build need to be made from a central point of view, which is about decision making. But you can't have one person making decisions. And this is where the broken political system is really failing us. Because we've got a seesaw every time we go from one, we've got two big parties and it swings from one side to the next.
Yeah, it doesn't swing very much. They're a bit much than muchness. There isn't much in the Labour Party, particularly now, not with Starmer. How is he even in the Labour Party? It's like, I think he woke up and got into the wrong...
I think probably a lot of people said that about Cameron before he was elected. There's a lot of ghosting that goes on before election that they end up for, it's electioneering. And I think they ghost what the current party is doing to stop being trapped. I think that's the case. So I'm more hopeful about Starmer than a lot of people. I think he's done a great job of turning the Labour Party around, because I blame Jeremy Corbynism for Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority more than anything. I think that he was just played to the right-wing media, who then got everybody terrified of him coming and crashing the economy, even though Boris Johnson got in, did Brexit, crashed the economy, and then Liz Truss, did the rest.
So I would say this. I used to write an article for the Gazette and Herald for about 5 years. When Jeremy Corbyn was elected, I said he's the best hope that we have for a more socially democratic society, right? You look at the history of his representation, and I said, and maybe I'll show it on this podcast, that unless, of course, the right-wing press get hold of him and do exactly what they did, essentially, so that because the right-wing press did that, isn't to say that what his principles or what he was trying to fight for, which I actually happen to agree with a lot of them, just so we're clear. And I would not vote. I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't be a member. I was never a member of the Labour Party, Liberal Democrats, or any of those parties, because I have, for some unknown reason, been able to see through the idea of, and you've said it, you've alluded to it yourself in your own experiences. It's like, right, what are the actual principles of the person that you're voting for? Oh, it doesn't matter what they are, because actually they're going to toe the party line. So Michelle Donlan, bless her, and her recent, you see that, her recent taxpayers paid her, what was it, defamation thing? Yeah. It's like, what is that about? And how can that even be allowed to happen? But anyway, regardless of her voting history, that the local politician doesn't go to the town council or the county council on a regular basis and say, what are the priorities? What is it you want us to represent, me to represent as a politician? Because that's how I'd do it. I'd want to know from the people what it is, not because Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn or anyone else, or definitely not Keir Starmer, would, because whilst when you're playing that game and saying, okay, well, he's not going to put the right-wing press. I'm not interested about the right-wing press. I want, as much as wherever possible, this is why this is an independent thing. We're talking about life, not just with yourselves, but with many different people. Sometimes, because we're a sustainable development organisation, we have to look at all aspects of sustainable development, which, as you know, is both the economy and the environment, but more importantly, it's a society. It's a societal thing. So how do you get people to understand the values? Because politicians aren't going to, because they're lobby, they're the highest interest. What is it the farmers need? What would, if you were going to represent again, what would you be saying on behalf of the British farmers?
I'm just going back a step.
Good, you can go where you want. I go all over the place.
The problem we have is that the British mindset for centuries has been fed a narrative that politics is bad. And so we don't teach politics, and we're very disengaged from politics.
And we don't
and
do
so as a
thinking,
result, you've only got a few that are engaged in politics.
Yeah.
And politics is like a game of snakes and ladders.
Yeah.
And once you're elected and you're in power, then you've got to govern. But you've also got to think about being re-elected, and that's what's going on, and that's what you see, and that's the difficulty with it.
Yeah.
So the projection that you see from a politician is all about them making sure that they're re-elected.
Yeah, I don't dig it. I don't want to play that game.
You don't know exactly,
Yeah.
and I don't want to play that
Well,
game
let's not
because
play that
I'm
game.
somebody
Start our own
that
party.
deals in truth. But if we started a party
Yeah.
and we wanted to be re-elected and you want to finish your
Yeah.
agenda, you would end up sort of going, oh God, this has happened. Oh, we better not talk about it to those guys
but
out there.
this is my point. I wanted to, and I'm going to start
And then
another
your
podcast.
enemies start using that
Yeah, but I'm
compromise
not.
against you.
Good luck to them.
Well, I
Good
know
luck to
that,
them.
but if you
enter into that game, I get it.
But
What do you think of the
because
Truth and Fair
people
Play?
like us that
Yeah.
care about
Yeah.
society
Yeah.
and want to make things
Yeah.
better, the difficulty is we won't sustain any long term in
Yeah.
the political system as it stands. Because
Yeah.
what we need, and it's what they have in countries in Scandinavia in
Yeah.
particular, they have politics as an embedded subject from a child.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And everybody needs to think politically
Yeah.
as well as sort of like, oh, what am I going to do today?
And you're
Because
taught differently
politics
here, not
is
to
a way
talk
of
about
life.
politics or religion, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
We're expected not to.
It really is serf-like behaviour
Yeah,
that has been
100%.
embedded.
100%, and I agree with that. I totally agree with you. I think, in fact, the reason why they don't want you to talk about politics or religion, because if you did for maybe 10 minutes more, you'd realise that in both contexts there's a massive, wait a minute, in both of those. Organised
Well, look,
religion,
look,
organised
we've
religion.
got a-
Exploitative
we've got
organised
an
religion.
establishment.
The Vatican.
Where we have a
etc.
royal family
Don't get me started on
who,
that.
who everybody thinks is not political. And yet
Oh,
the Prime Minister
yeah,
has
yeah.
weekly meetings with
yeah.
them. And,
Yeah.
and this narrative
Yeah.
is allowed to fly. And
Yeah.
and people don't want to talk about it. If you try and say anything about it, a lot of people will shout you down.
Yeah, but they won't last forever. Like, France hasn't got a royal family.
Yeah, well,
and-
we missed out on that revolution.
No, but I don't want a revolution. I do definitely want a peaceful, non-violent revolution so that we have a societal change, so that we look at our values. The only way to do that, and you're right, is for people to be more engaged. And for that, we need schools that got the right sort of support, as opposed to schools that have been for many years designed not by teachers and head teachers. They work really hard in the system that they're expected to work in. But we are basically, your standard school is there to create a workforce. It isn't a really creative place where you get entrepreneurs and people going, oh, 1 second, yeah, maybe we should change this element. We should change this element. We don't encourage critical thinking. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about sociology in a way. And when you do, when you start getting involved in those, you kind of look at it, then you compare to what, as you said, you looked at the royal family and you go, well, what? Wait a minute. The Prime Minister goes to...
Well,
why
look,
would they go to that person? They know nothing about life.
the truth
The royals
of the-
know nothing about life.
I had a meeting this morning with a fisherman. And,
fisherman?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
right, okay,
We're
yeah.
coordinating because, I mean, fish is food.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. I like a bit of
and
fish.
food is under attack, which means
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
us are under attack.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what people fail to see.
Can you screw down on that? What's actually happening here? What's happening with the British farms and fisheries? What's going on? Where's it coming from? Where's the pressure and the...
It's a globalized corporation thing. I mean, to give you one, extraordinary fact, we eat a lot of cod. We still use a lot of cod in Britain mostly, but we've got some of the best lobster. We've got some of the best fish in our waters.
Yeah.
But Brexit has caused huge problems because we've lost the ability to export that fish to our market
Right,
because it
right.
needs to be exported
Yeah.
quickly. So lobsters, for instance, you get some of the best lobsters from Britain, and most of them were exported to France. They were actually labelled from Brittany, apparently, but they were British.
Right.
And all of that is being closed down. Since this government took over, they have put 38% into a rewilding conservation area of their waters. We've still got European vessels fishing in our waters. And we have lost the ability to fish a lot of those waters because 38% has gone into rewilding. Plus, you've got these ports, these free ports being opened. And on top of that, we've got massive wind farms, which nobody really seems to know much about, which are actually reducing the amount of fishing capabilities. So as a result, because we've also lost the fishing waters that we had in Norway, which was an agreement we had before Brexit.
Yeah.
They've managed to claw back 10%, but most of our cod now is imported from Russia, which is why you're spending so much on your fish and chips.
Wow.
So this war on food, as I call it, is I'm worried about it, because it's, before the repeal of the Corn Laws, 1846, there was a feudal system where every citizen, unless they were part of the cabal, had no control over prices of food or availability of food. It was down to the lord. If you had a job, you were housed and fed.
Yeah.
And what we're going into is a globalized system, in my view, where it's happened with coal, with our energy. It's happened with our rivers and our utility companies.
Yeah.
It's happened with our clothing.
Yeah.
And now we're going into a system with food where we will have no control over what you have. You'll have no control over the standards.
Yeah.
Most of it will be imported.
Yeah.
And the food that is produced here, I believe, only the wealthy will be able to afford. A
Wow.
bit like they can only
Wow.
afford the cashmere and
Yeah.
so forth in clothing, and everybody else has to wear synthetic fibres from, which are made in India and China
Yeah.
and so forth. So that's what I think is going on.
What would you suggest is the antidote to that then?
The only antidote I can see is that we go back to Europe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Europe. I never was somebody that said Europe was perfect.
Oh God, no. This is
But
corrupt.
at least we've got some democratic control over it. The
Yeah.
CPTPP trade model, which is what they've joined, but we haven't completely acceded to that yet, means that corporations can sue national governments who bring in any legislation which inhibits their profits.
Profits, yeah.
So, and there's no democratic accountability or no chance of changing anything at all once you're into that zone, which is what we have with the sewage going into our rivers. And they can just charge us the earth.
Yeah.
It's we're all held to ransom.
I think it's absurd. I mean, I have from day one when Thatcher, bless her, and I know that she had a different opinion of what the European market was supposed to be, and she was a supporter in ways, wasn't she? I haven't many good things to say about Margaret Thatcher. I can't think why, but the whole idea of selling off our utilities, which are fundamentally now owned by foreign countries.
Yeah, including the Chinese Communist
Chinese
Party.
Communist Party. Thank you for saying it. I think when people say it, I say it to people, they go, look, what? I said it to you the other day. And you just say, what, anyway? You go, look at what? Yeah, that French governments, that other governments own our infrastructure. Now, I don't know about you people, but I can't believe, that if we're talking about water companies, that if everything was nationalised, we're not talking about communism, we're talking about self-preservation. We would not be having a cost of living crisis, certainly based on the cost of fuel and the cost of whatever, if we didn't have to pay dividends to shareholders in privatised companies, most of which don't generate the power themselves. So the energy companies don't use, so whatever energy company you are, research yourselves. Do they have a place where they generate the energy? No, they buy it on a market, which is absurd. We do not need, we should have a monopoly. It should be a state monopoly on water, because we all need it. Air, if that will become a commodity, or certainly the pollution of it, pollution of the rivers, etc., which farmers also, I think you'll agree, have some responsibility around leaching or runoff.
Well, we can come into that in a minute if you
Yeah.
like. I'll tell you what's going on with that.
Okay, no, do. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm saying, in general, the water system, the electricity, the coal, whatever it is, needs to be owned by the country and distributed at the lowest possible charge. It shouldn't be something we look at I think the same thing about houses. We shouldn't be looking to make money out of housing. People shouldn't have second homes. So you're saying about building new homes. I'd say, okay, hold a second. There are more people with second homes than there are homeless people in this country.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, so let's work on that one.
But I'm more thinking from the young point of view.
Oh my
that
God!
they
So
can't afford to buy a house.
but I'm saying that if you didn't make money out of housing, and you look more to provision and go, wait a minute, we've got generations of people that are coming up, children, myself, and you have, and it's like, right, how are they going to afford rent, let alone buying a house? So it's like, no, I don't agree with the idea that people make money. I certainly don't agree with second homes. I don't think people making money out of and they become more, because that's what rich people do, bless them all. When, for instance, COVID, I mean, I would look for to claim back all the money from all those rich people that got given grants, the politicians and their families, won't mention any names here, who set up PPE companies who are given, who aren't getting it, you know, Sunak or Bullsack, as I like to call him, isn't looking to investigate over 14 billion pounds that's gone missing.
I think they saw what Vladimir Putin did after the fall of the Berlin Wall and set an oligarchy, and I think they're mirroring it.
Of course, and there's loads of empty houses and properties in London and various cities that are owned by oligarchs who just invest, so we've got loads of empty space. So housing can be sorted by not making money out of it. Water, gas, electricity, you name it. As long as it's done sustainable, because we have a climate. There is definitely something that we have done as an industrial species since the Industrial Revolution that has decimated or has affected our environment. And even if we just talked about asthma, you'd agree that having so many cars and so many whatever, right?
But but that brings us back to the beaching cuts and
why was that?
The Tories.
Yeah, but why was it?
Because they wanted everyone to have a car.
There you go. Bless you. We should have more conversations. It's like I say that people that go, "What are you talking about?" I go, that's why they did it.
The McAlpines wanted to build the roads, and they wanted everyone to have a car.
Yeah, exactly. And they were giving money to the Conservatives.
It's a sovereign individual thing.
Totally. So they go, how are we going to get them? Well, you just cut off their opportunity to have public transport. So all the public transport should be renationalised, not in a communist way, not in any other way, just a way that's fair and equitable and works. And therefore, we would have a massive effect on our environmental impact. You do it by just having a state-sponsored, remembering the state is us and we are it, and all that collective money. Because it's an ironic thing, isn't it? When it's all going groovy and the bankers are making all the money, it's a capitalist system. But as soon as that system, which it inevitably has, and it always will, crashes, it becomes a socialist system where it's bailed out by the many, the taxes. Anyway, back to organophosphates, love. Let's talk about that.
But
hello, girls.
The one thing to note, which actually does make my blood boil,
go on then,
is that in this cost of living crisis, where we are seeing millions of people and millions of children in poverty, unable to eat, which is disgraceful. The Sovereign Wealth Fund or the Crown Estates have done so well from the seabed, because the seabed is owned by Crown Estates.
Disgraceful.
And their wealth has never been as healthy as it is now, because George Osborne, I think it was soon after they took power in 2010, switched back the funding to pre-George III for the Crown Estates. Wow. It is worth looking into.
No, 100%.
But
100%.
And this is what I learned from speaking to the fishermen this morning, is that there are enormous wind farms being erected on the coast.
Yeah.
And some of these things are, unthinkably large.
Yeah.
And it's stopping them being able to fish.
Yeah.
And that is stopping us having access to our food. And that is a real concern. But it's a money spinner, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to look at. If you look at the Duchy of Cornwall, look at the people that own houses but can't own the leaseholds. It's honestly a disgrace in a modern, mostly enlightened society, that we would have such, at the core of our civilization, that we have such, I don't know what to say without without swearing, really. I'm struggling.
You're getting a bit of Tourette's.
Well, a little bit of Tourette's is coming in, so let me think of a really polite way of saying it. We'll just say that I feel it's totally exploitative, that it shouldn't exist as a system. We need to have a proper meritocracy, where people are rewarded by them on their merits, that we have inequality in education, equality to housing, equality to good food. How can we advertise, publicise, and maybe there's posters you want to put up in our shop in Chippenham to promote British farming and fisheries? What is it we need to be saying as a collective? What do we need to be aware of?
Well, look, we're in a pre-election period, and we've only got, whether you like it or not, we're in a well.
Yeah.
We're down a deep well, and we've got two ladders to decide to go up. One is going back up the one we've got at the moment, which is the Conservatives, which we know would be a disaster. And the other one is getting on the Labour ladder. There isn't really another choice. Yes, in Chippenham, there is this awful situation that it's split between Labour and Lib Dems, and Lib Dems
Not if I run. You can vote for me.
carry the sort of argument for being the main party.
Yeah.
But we need to defeat as many Conservative MPs, because everything's run from the Commons, really. From Parliament. Yes, we've got the peers, and let's not go into all of the, the constitutional problems.
Yeah.
But in the immediacy, we need to get rid of as many of the Conservative MPs as possible.
Wow, you mentioned get rid of Conservative MPs, and those.
And they spook the cows. Yeah.
Wow.
Ultimately.
And that's what happens to the kids, people. They get spooked by Conservatives.
Ultimately, that's what I believe is that you need to look into who your candidates are.
Yeah.
And you can do this. You can grill them.
Grill
if
them?
you're not standing yourself.
I think I will stand. I'll tell you for why, because I have no faith in the Liberal Democrats at all. When I used to vote for them, I've interviewed them and I've seen them at close hand. They have absolutely stopped us as an organisation that works with some of the hardest to reach, some of the poorest children, helping to feed those kids. So what they say publicly and what they're actually doing is appalling. So I've no faith. Bless whoever runs for the Liberal Democrats. What's her name? Lisa, what's her name? Gibson.
Oh, yes.
Lisa Gibson, is it? Yes, I said that. I said exactly that.
And who's the Labour candidate? Do you know?
There isn't one, I don't think. I think they said they were going to run in everyone. But bless Nick Puntis as the Conservative candidate. We went to the town hall on about 10 of us the other day to complain about these Liberal Democrats and this whole process about this funding that was in a totally undemocratic process. It's an ongoing thing, and it's going to become public. But while these letters, there was 10 letters from the general public to back up what we were saying, through the whole time these letters were being read out it's a council meeting, Nick Puntis was on his computer, just going through his dates, his diaries and
his
stuff.
emails.
Yeah, totally. We're just kind of like, I just want to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why isn't he listening to what the general public is saying about this process? Because he's just playing at it. He has, why anyone would want to run for any of the political parties, I'll never know. If you haven't seen, it's corrupt and it's beyond corruption. It's morally corrupt, should we say?
Yeah. The challenge is, though, getting elected as an independent is hard because how do you reach everybody? It costs a lot of money to reach everybody.
Absolutely, but I agree. So,
and then you split the vote, and then you let the Conservatives back.
No, I don't think anyone in the right mind is going to. The Conservatives have killed. If you were to look just at what's happened in the time that Michelle Donlan, so she was standing strong with who? She was standing strong with David Cameron, who brought in austerity. Yeah. So that was before the banking crisis.
And don't forget the Lib Dems did that as well.
Oh my God! Don't tell me about that. That's it. That's when they ruined themselves. It's like you jumped into bed with the Conservatives and you gave up every bit of the things that made you different, like the student fees, etc., etc. Nick Clegg, where's he doing now? Working for Google.
Facebook.
Good Facebook, is it? Yeah, Facebook. You're right. Wow, that's the sort of jobs you get.
But he's all right, Jack.
Well, I bet he is. But so Michelle Donlan was Theresa May, David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Itchy Ballsack. 5 prime ministers that you're supposed to tell me that you believe that they're so diverse that you stand strong or you stand up or you're not going as an individual. All's happened with her is she voted and got promoted, certainly by Johnson and Sunak. It's like, what are you talking about? These people have no idea about society or community. This is appalling.
This is what I think. There's a lot of people who are deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
There is a tactical voting arrangement. There's one website called stopthetories.vote.
Yeah.
Do look in it. They have got recommendations for the locals on the 2nd of May,
Yeah.
the PCC elections.
Yeah.
And I am working with them.
Yeah.
Best for Britain have got one coming up for the general election as well.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we get rid of the Conservatives. That has to be the start of a 10. Whether you agree with Keir Starmer or not is by the by, you know. The Labour Party's construction is better than the Conservatives. It has got union involvement. There is more ability to move the dial with Labour.
Move the dial.
And
girls.
there's 85% within the Labour Party support for proportional representation.
Yeah.
And really the cure for
That
what we've
is-
got
yeah,
is changing the
voting system, yeah.
We definitely need a written constitution. There's other things that we need, you know, in terms
Yeah.
of the House of Lords. We definitely
Yeah.
need big reforms. But
Yeah.
so my hopes are pinned in a Labour majority and
Yeah.
as big as possible.
Yeah.
I have absolutely lost faith in the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
Completely and utterly.
Yeah.
All trust. And you know that's where I am. So my backing is going into the Labour Party. They have been working with us and listening to us.
Yeah.
And
The farmers, you
asking.
mean? Yeah.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are working with us. We're working on policy, and that gives me hope
Yeah.
that they are thinking about things for the right reason. But
Yeah.
if I get a Labour MP here, a brand new MP, I know who my candidate is, I've met her,
Yeah.
then if she's not going to do as we want, we are going to be getting in our tractors. and
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
going
yeah,
to be
that's what you
causing
need.
a lot of trouble.
Good.
Because we've had enough.
Yeah, good.
And we're not going to.
Good.
I know James Gray is my MP here. It doesn't matter.
I haven't heard from him
if
for a long
I
while.
put petrol all over myself and the farm, he's not going. He's not going. Nothing is going to make James Gray.
But if they
change.
change the paper that they use, if they change the vellum, he will be on his high horse.
So I think a changeover, like the Red Wall had a change in 2019
Yeah.
with all the Tories, and those new MPs were more receptive to their constituents.
Yeah.
And what we need is to make sure that we're elected, because you don't elect the Prime Minister, you elect an MP, and that's what you've got to remember.
Yeah.
So check out who the tactical
Yeah.
vote is to get rid of the Tory, first of all.
Yeah.
Vote tactically. If it means having to stomach voting Lib Dem, then that is the best thing to do.
Or me.
Or you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I know what you're saying. What do you think about the Truth and Fair Party?
I think Gina's motivations are good. I just think with first past the post,
Yeah.
it is impossible pretty much to get elected as a new
Yeah.
party. I mean, look how long UKIP began as it was something else before it was UKIP, like the referendum party.
Yeah.
And it had billions of pounds behind it from James Goldsmith.
Yeah.
He sent a video to everyone's house, I don't know if you remember, in 1990 something.
Yeah.
And even that didn't dissuade everyone to vote for them, and they didn't win a seat.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I think that in first past the post, you're better off to think, well, what can I do to influence power? So I think it would have been better if Gina was thinking more like me than running another candidate who's just going to split the vote.
But I think that I've interviewed their whatever part, where is it, Marlborough sort of area,
East Wiltshire.
East Wiltshire against Danny Kruger. So that lovely man across there, I talked to them. They weren't going to put people in where they thought it would split the vote. So where they thought there was more of a chance of a Conservative winning, they would go. They're going to campaign. So they're not putting them in everywhere.
No, they're not. No, but the issue is if you've got a Conservative, a Lib Dem, a Labour, a Truth and Fair, and a Reform,
Yeah.
then the vote is going to split.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the idea of the tactical vote is to focus on just voting to get rid. I know it's not the best, most healthy thing
I
to
know,
do.
I know, but
but
then
we're
you end up
saying
with
let's
those-
vote
yeah.
smart
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
to get rid of the Conservative.
Right, but
With the
unfortunately,
candidate there's this thing called the primaries, and East Wiltshire is running it.
Yeah.
Where they've done one recently down in Devon, where people in the community can go to hustings, meet the candidates, and decide which candidate they want to be their progressive candidate.
Yeah.
And that is happening in East Wiltshire.
Yeah, good.
And I'm absolutely behind that, because Danny Kruger, absolutely, I mean, every hair in my body is standing on end now, even thinking about this guy.
Yeah.
He thinks that women have no bodily authority. I mean, unbelievable. The guy is a monster, and I can't believe anyone would vote for him, particularly anyone who supports women and women's liberation. He belongs in 2 centuries ago.
Yeah, but my problem, say for instance in Chippenham, is the Lib Dems are saying running a whole campaign based on the fact that they're the only ones that are likely to get rid of the Conservatives.
No. I mean, the tactical vote will be working out polling.
Yeah.
Plus historical data will be put in there as well.
Yeah.
But in East Wiltshire, if the primary delivers, and it probably what ought to happen more, and again, it's this disengagement from politics. You mentioned politics to me before. Oh, there's a weak.
That's why I want to run. I'm going to get you totally right. I'm with you. Let's do something different. Let's prove to them that they can't just go, well, they're going to vote Lib Dem now because they've had.
But
they're never going to vote Labour.
If you were going to run, you should have already been having your campaign going for the last 2 years.
Nah. I'm way too charming for that nonsense. Listen, I've only even come to the idea of doing it because of the appalling nature of how the town councils...
Are you going to go dressed as a dolphin?
I don't need to. Yeah, I'll just go dressed as I am. We've worked in this community for 25 years. We've worked with the hardest areas of it. We don't normally... This is a beautiful day. This is a beautiful place to be. But normally, we will be working in the harder areas, which politicians... don't go. Michelle Donlan doesn't know about our communities. I think Lisa Gibson lives in... Does she live in Bradford and Avon?
I don't know.
Well,
no.
good luck to her. I'm sure she's a nice person, but unfortunately, they've already proven to me, I'm motivated now. More independents to get motivated. Once the parties realise you can't play, that no one's playing that game anymore. Has to start somewhere. It may as well start now because we've gone through such an appalling time. But I'll always support you, Liz. Don't you worry. Right, thank you.
Well, I'm not going to stand as an independent.
I was going to, but I was wondering why you didn't, though.
Because I don't want to split the vote.
Okay, well, bless you. Because you're still, I get it, and it's tactical, and you're playing. Understandably, my whole motivation is to make sure that Lib Dems in our constituency realise that it isn't just a choice between the appalling Conservatives. And, well, so it's going to be Lib Dems. Duncan was a decent chap, no doubt about it. But the point of the matter is, Duncan Hames, when the Lib Dems were last in, which is also why I supported them. But at the same time, now it's like, wow, man, look at how your town council, particularly in Chippenham, they voted against having the Neald Hall in Chippenham as a warm and safe space during the biggest crisis of fuel poverty we've ever had. The Lib Dems look at who voted against the idea that should be
And what was their rationale for doing so?
I think it's something to do with arse and hole. But I'm not a doctor. It's like, what are you talking about? You don't know about society. You don't live it. You don't work in it. You don't understand about poverty. That a social space, which is paid for by the taxpayers, is there, and you're not going to let people in to keep warm. That's what's motivated me. That's why I can't just play the game and vote Lib Dem, which I've done.
I'm not telling you to vote Lib Dem.
No, I know you're not. I know what you're, I know what you're saying, but
I have got to a place where I've decided that I've met the candidate from Labour.
Yeah.
She is an economist.
Who is that candidate?
Her name's Zoe Billingham.
Right.
She's an economist. She used to work in the Treasury.
Yeah.
And she left after Brexit happened because she was asked to get behind Brexit and she knew that it didn't work for the economy. And so I feel that she's got the right credentials to do that. I also know, as I said, there is a growing movement within Labour, 85% support for proportional representation.
Yeah.
And that for me is really the goal.
I agree, but so I get
Because
to,
then an independent can win.
Well, no problem. But say I win just purely on my good looks and charm, right? What are you laughing? I get
I
there.
stood
I'm
as a
going to-
candidate, I know how hard it is.
Yeah, of course. But the point is that in the very unlikely case that I was to get into government, I of course would be aligning and voting with, for the benefit of our constituency, on the issues that the people in there, whether it's Keir Starmer, whoever, that are going to have the most effect, because I have worked for over a quarter century with hard to reach people, not just around Wiltshire, and there's plenty of them, but in Manchester, in London, in Cornwall, you name it, Swindon, lots of projects in Swindon. Point being is they don't actually know what's really going on the ground. So I'm actually quite an unusual candidate if I'm going to be a candidate, which I think I will be, because I'm turning my experience of what's needed into, and I'm not going to put up with all the, you can say, don't worry, you're not going to get voted. But it's putting it into the ether, it's putting it into the argument that these are the principles that should be happening. It will take a time to change, but it will definitely change. Even the political parties will have to think differently if they believe that idiots like me, and some idiots, were going to get involved in politics in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah.
There's a long lot of stuff I just said there already.
Well, look, I've done the bit
Vote
of
for me.
standing as a candidate.
I really admire that, by the way. I do. Really.
But albeit with a party, but against in a very strong conservative area.
Yeah.
And the challenge is hard, and
Yeah.
you need to begin it a
Yeah.
long time in advance so
Yeah.
that people know who you are and that you'll
Yeah,
stand.
I think that they've already been bored senseless with what's been going on. So actually, a bit of fresh air, a bit of a different way of looking at the debate. Before we finish, though, you're supporting which person for the PCC?
Yeah, I'm supporting
Police
the
and Crime
Labour
Commission. Yeah,
candidate, Stanka Adam Cover.
right.
And I
When is
met
that-
her.
when is
I
that
met
vote?
her. That's next week,
Next week.
on the 2nd of May.
Yeah,
I've met Stanka and a couple of times, and she's really very good. She actually used to work in the PCC office, so
Yeah.
she knows what she's
Yeah.
doing. She is a sitting councillor as well, and she really is a very committed public servant.
yeah,
And she's very straightforward and very sweet,
Yeah.
and knows what she's doing. And I'm not against the PCC office as it stands. I think we had this conversation before,
Yeah.
because the old police authorities were not really working.
yeah,
It is a transactional, financial decision-making process mostly. But I think for me, this election, we know we're likely going to end up with a Labour government.
yeah,
And if we got a Labour PCC in Wiltshire
Yeah.
with a Labour government, we actually might get some funding for
Yeah.
our police, because we are the worst funded
Yeah.
police force in the country,
Yeah.
which actually is appalling.
yeah.
And everybody's suffering because of that. And that's what I'm hoping will begin a change. And I think if we oust the Tories in this PCC election,
Yeah.
it will send a massive message to the country, as in, wow, Trueberry Wiltshire has gone red.
Yeah.
So please, everyone, vote for
Yeah,
Stanka.
maybe we shouldn't put this out as the shop podcast. Maybe this should be the first podcast in my new political podcast called Truth versus Politics. The Emperor's New Clothes. Because if this is next week, maybe we should do this and put it out. Not the shop, not the social urban positivity. This should be the new thing. This should be the first one, so we can put it out before the election next week.
I don't mind. It's up to you.
I'm gonna. I'm gonna put it on the shop one as well, but you can't boost it if it's on our, because it obviously.
Election.
Well, it's not because it's an election. It's because it doesn't allow you to boost on Facebook. We got it on YouTube. We got it on Spotify, whatever. But actually, this is so. I love it. This is a fantastic, which is purely about something you know a lot about, farming, etc., but also about politics. So I think this should be the first. I'm saying this to our editor, Maya, that we should put this out as a special one-off before the election next week and see if anyone picks up on it.
Brilliant.
Right? Thank you. I'm going to come back to you again. Thank you, everyone. That's a wrap. Don't know what it is anymore. It's a new show.
We'll work and we'll work till the end of our days to keep the few in their comfortable ways. We'll do as we're bid, 'cause we're programmed that way till the switch is switched and we all have